Have you ever just stumbled over English nouns? Wondered why you can ask for 2 sugars in your coffee, but saying you want 2 rices with your dinner sounds off. It might seem a little random, but believe it or not, there's a really simple logic hiding right under the surface. So let's dive in and crack the code of these so-called uncountable nouns.
So yeah, the whole confusion really kicks off with what feels like a total contradiction in the rules. It's one of those things that trips up pretty much everyone learning English. But I promise, once you see the pattern, it all just clicks into place.
Okay, so here it is, the big question. You can walk into any cafe and say, "I'll have 2 coffees, please," and nobody's going to bat an eye. But then if you try to order 2 rices at a restaurant, it just sounds, well, strange. So what's the deal? What is the hidden rule that makes one totally fine and the other one just plain wrong?
Well, the answer is all about a fundamental split in English nouns. We basically sort them into 2 big teams, the ones we can count and the ones we see as just a big single mass. Let's break down exactly what that means.
So, on one side, you've got your countable nouns. These are for all the individual things you can actually point to and count. 1 cat, 2 chairs, 3 ideas. They have a singular and a plural form. Easy enough. But then on the other side, you've got uncountable nouns. Think of things like water, or wool, or information. These are substances or concepts that don't really have clear, separate units.
And this, right here, really shows you the difference in action. We can all easily say 3 cats or 2 plants, no problem. But 2 wools or 3 waters? Yeah, that sounds weird, doesn't it? That's because we think of wool and water as a whole thing, not as a bunch of individual items.
You'll also hear another term for this, mass noun. And honestly, that's a great way to think about it. I mean, you wouldn't try to count every single grain of sand on a beach, would you? You just see sand. The exact same logic applies to abstract ideas like knowledge or advice. You can definitely have more of it, but you can't have, say, 3 knowledges.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. This one single difference, is it countable or uncountable, actually changes all the other words we use in a sentence, like articles and words that talk about quantity.
All right, this little flowchart, this is your secret weapon for picking the right article. Seriously, the whole decision boils down to one super simple question you have to ask yourself. When I say this noun, does the person I'm talking to know exactly which one I mean?
If the answer is yes, if you both know which specific thing you're talking about, you use the. It's that simple. When you're at the dinner table and say, "Pass the salt," you're talking about that one specific salt shaker right there. It's definite. We both know which one.
But what happens if the answer is no? If you're not talking about a specific one? Well, then the rule splits. If it's a singular, countable noun, you use a or an, like I need an envelope. Any envelope will do. For plural nouns or any uncountable noun, you generally use no article at all. You'd say, "She's afraid of rats," or "I need help."
And this distinction also tells us which words to use for quantity. We call them determiners. For things you can count, you ask how many hours, or you say, "I have a few problems." But for things you can't count, you ask how much money, or talk about having a little progress. See, the same logic is at play.
Okay, so you're getting the hang of the basics, but English, it always loves to throw a curveball. Some nouns can actually play for both teams. They can be uncountable one minute and countable the next, and it all depends on the context.
So how do we deal with that? This is where really understanding the idea behind the rule, instead of just trying to memorize a giant list, becomes so important. It all comes down to a simple shift in meaning. Let's take the word glass as an example. When you're talking about the material, the substance itself, it's uncountable. You'd say, "The window is made of glass." But the second you talk about an object made from that material, like something you drink out of, it suddenly becomes countable. Would you like a glass of water?
And this works for abstract nouns too. Take experience. When we mean the general concept, the knowledge and skill you build up over time, it's uncountable. A job ad might say, "Experience unnecessary." But an experience, that's a specific, single event that happened to you. Like, I had an interesting experience last year.
We see the exact same pattern with the word life. When you're speaking philosophically about life in general, it's uncountable. Life is complicated. But when you're referring to the specific journey of one person, it becomes countable. My grandmother had a hard life.
All right, so if you can't just slap a number in front of an uncountable noun, how in the world do you talk about a specific amount? You can't say 2 advices, but people definitely give you more than one piece of it. So here's the practical tool you need.
The trick, the secret weapon here, is to use what we can call piece words or unit words. These are basically little counters that let you package the uncountable noun into a measurable unit. This effectively makes it countable, and this is going to be your go-to strategy from now on.
Let's just look at a few examples here. You don't have an advice, you have a piece of advice. It's not a bread, but a loaf of bread. And this, right here, is how we solve our original mystery. You can't order 2 rices, but you can absolutely order 2 bowls or 2 helpings of rice. See?
So here's the big takeaway. The most important thing to remember is that the difference between countable and uncountable isn't always about the thing itself. It's about perspective. It's about how we see it. Are we looking at it as one big unified mass, like water? Or are we looking at it in separate, individual units, like bottles of water?
This idea that grammar is often just about how we perceive the world is a really powerful one, and it kind of leaves us with a final question to chew on. What other so-called rules in English aren't really about memorization at all, but are actually just logical systems based on how we choose to look at things?